Hey guys, my guest today is the author of a delightful little book of aging. She's a graduate from Naropa University's program in Writing and Poetics and has penned articles and interviews for the Aspen Times, Care2.com, Nexus Magazine, Omaha Lifestyles, the Rogue Valley Messenger, and 60andme.com. She shares a passionate and uplifting message about midlife women, creativity, and power. She's also the co-host of the iHeart radio show and podcast, Yak About Today. You guys can find it, Y-A-K, Yak About Today. It's a popular public speaker also for ERGs, that's employment relation groups like Charles Schwab. A recent transplant to Austin, Texas. She lives with her husband, Dean, and their Labrador Retriever. I got to give a quick shout out to Dean. He's the one who connected us. Her upcoming book, Creatrix Rising, The Emerging Archetype of Midlife Women, will be released in the fall of 2021. Welcome to the show, Stephanie Raffelock.
That's such an enthusiastic introduction. You can ask me anything.
Bada boom, bada bing. I did okay.
Bada boom. I love it.
Guys, before we press record on that, I was telling her, I hopefully I can get through this because there's some tongue twisters in there. But I did okay. I pronounced everything correctly for you.
You did fine. Yeah.
We made it through. Guys, you can check out Stephanie. It's very simple. It's her name. Her website is literally her name, StephanieRaffelock.com. It is spelled Raffelock. Also on Instagram, it's all together, Stephanie Raffelock on IG. And you guys can also follow me on IG. It's the same thing, Mike DiCioccio. And we are mic'd up with Stephanie Raffelock. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So here's what we're going to do. Right out of the gates, there's an awesome quote on your website that caught my attention. And it's totally in alignment with the reason that I'm doing this show. Many people know that my mission of the show is to inspire people to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. And the only way we can do that is through having people like yourself on to tell these amazing stories. So the quote is, "Storytelling is a sacred art. We long to hear the story of others and find in that our own journey intertwined." Can you elaborate what you mean with that for our audience?
Well, there's a wonderful book that I read years ago called "We're Connected by Our Stories." And that's really true. When you think about back in the day when we used to go to an office, people would stand around the water cooler or the coffee pot or something, and they would share stories of the weekend. And you're always looking to hear your own story in someone else's. The inspiration that you get from someone else's isn't so much that they did something greater than you did. It's that you hear a little piece of yourself, a little kernel of your own truth in the story that they give you. So storytelling, to me, it really is sacred art. It's what makes the world go round. There are going to be some amazing stories that come out and are already coming out from this COVID time. People telling their stories. We learn who we are as human beings. We learn how we are as human beings through how we tell our stories. So that's what I mean by storytelling as sacred art.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I can just think about what inspired me. I'll speak for myself on the fact that I was listening to a lot of podcasts where business people and entrepreneurs were telling their stories where they're overcoming adversity. And I'll have to say, some of them were just so horrific where I felt, oh my God, like they did this and they were at that level. Literally, like Eric Thomas was talking about being on the streets, and Ed Milet talked about how the water was turned off in his apartment. And him and his wife were literally needed to bathe in the pool shower and hold up a towel. And I'm thinking over here, like, okay, I'm going to take a shot on myself to be an entrepreneur because I know these people started from the ground up. So I'm going to listen to them because I know that they've gotten there. So through storytelling, those stories had me like gripping my steering wheel when I was listening to the podcast. And now here I am on this side of the mic interviewing people like you to tell your story. And I absolutely love that. Another great quote right from your website. "A good story can change the way you see the world."
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes.
And it's so true. So tell us a little bit more about your story. How did you get interested in the content, especially you use the word aging, and I know that is an attention grab too, but can you tell us what makes you so interested in, like, it's midlife and the aging idea, and how is that connected to your purpose?
Aging is a bit of a shocking event. because one day you're going to walk by the mirror and the person you see looks totally different than the person that you feel like inside.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hit my 60s, what I noticed was that there were a lot of women around me that clearly weren't going gently into that good night. These were women that were entrepreneurs. They were starting encore careers. They were teachers. They were mentoring. They were doing something other than just sitting back in the Barca Lounger or going out onto the golf course.
Mm-hmm.
They were engaged. And so I wanted to pile my own stories about how do you stay engaged in the world. You know, you sign your emails with be great and be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes as we age, we think that the greatness eludes us
Mm-hmm.
or the dreams elude us. You know, are you too old to dream? How old is too old to dream? How young is too young to dream? And so I wanted to address some of those issues. What does failure after 50 feel like? Is it different than failure when you're 20 or 30? And the answer is yes and no to all of it.
Depends, right?
But basically, the human experience is the human experience. But I did want to tell it from the perspective of what it is to be older and to own one's wisdom, to own the arc of one's own experience, and share that in the world in a way that it might be useful to someone else.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful and well said. Yeah, I actually talked to a gentleman yesterday who started an organization about around blindness because his mother lost her eyesight or was impaired. And he's in his 50s and kind of had a repurpose, like a rebirth, and started an organization. So we were just talking, there is really no age. It's all a mental thing of putting kind of a block on it. And when I started saying be great and be grateful, someone that was an older gentleman wrote back to me and said, how about just be grateful? And I almost was like, okay, I don't think he understands what I mean by that. I think, if he feels that was being too up, like too forward maybe. But what I mean by it is everybody has something that they enjoy doing, whatever it is. Go and do it to the highest level you can. And then when you're able to do that, stop and reflect and be grateful that you're able to achieve those things. And whether it's get up and read a book, be grateful for that, or start a company. So that's what I mean by it. And I appreciate you sharing that because you totally get it. Even right on your website,
Totally
I have the notes here. So you write about universal life transforming forces of grief, gratitude, triumph, loss, and love. We just talked about be great, be grateful. Can you talk about the importance of gratitude every day? Do you start your day and end your day in gratitude?
I do start, when I was 17 years old, I met a woman from India and I was friends with her daughter. And this woman told me that when she got up every morning, the first thing she did was she said, "Thank you for my life," before her feet ever hit the ground. And there was something about that stoked me at that young age. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to see what that's like. So that's the way I start every single day is thank you for my life. Now, when my feet hit the floor, things might change.
Yeah.
But I do try to start in that way. And I practice gratitude in the simplest of terms. I practice breathing in thank you and breathing out thank you. It doesn't necessarily have to be attached to something. We don't have to attach our gratitude to something. The fact that you woke up this morning, you had clean water, you had something to eat, to come do this show. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But just thank you doesn't have to be attached to anything. So it's how I try to live my life in gratitude. I think it makes me a nicer person. When I'm feeling grateful, I'm not nearly as cranky, right?
Yeah, it's when you're really feeling it too. And I want to make sure that we don't mistake in simply saying a couple things you're thankful for, which is a nice practice.
Yes.
But it's when you feel it, when you're actually thinking about having that thing that you're maybe linking it to, or just making a simple statement of like having that ability to get out of bed, right? But you're feeling it more so, like you're internalizing it. And I think that's when
it's a mindset.
Yeah, it's a mindset
that you're describing.
You're not just like, I'm happy, blah, blah, blah. It's actually like, no, you're the person who's doing this exercise. It's an exercise, an internal thing. And I know you do that. And I could see it. I could see it on you that you do that. You also talk about grief and loss, something that's not easy to talk about. Can you elaborate on some of the things that are in your book?
We're a culture that doesn't do well with grief. And yet here we are in COVID times. And grief and love are the two great transformative forces of life. When you think about being in grief, what does grief do? It textures your heart to a more compassionate way of being in the world, because you know a suffering that now many other people know. And so you can relate to their suffering. And the compassion that we see in other people isn't because that they just decided to be compassionate. It's because they have suffered at some point in their life. And so they know what suffering is. Now, the trick with grief is you don't want to get stuck there. But at the same time, if you don't pay homage to grief, if you don't give her just due, she will dog you. She will hunt you down, and it will come out in another way.
Almost like you need to get hit by a frying pan that says, "Hey, you didn't catch the message."
Exactly,
right here.
You missed it.
You think you're passing on? You gotta accept it.
That's right. And so grief, I think, is what builds the bridge to that next phase, which is love, which is also one of the great transformative forces of life. And in these times, in these COVID times, there's a lot of grief out there, and people feel very anxious and very upset. They're not quite sure what to do with it. And sometimes you don't have to do anything but grief, but just sit with it quietly, to allow yourself some tears, to allow yourself some deep feelings of heartbreak. That allows one to move forward as much as trying to talk yourself into having a good day or being in a good mood.
Would you say that it's important for us to remember it's okay to be human?
Yes, it's okay to be human.
And have those feelings? Because if you try to be like the Terminator and you're all metal and you're letting those bullets bounce off of grief, you're not really overcoming it. It's like you're just trying to get to the next step, and you're not internalizing it. Again, not to overuse that, but I do feel it's important. So I'm glad you elaborated on that. And so, yeah, just it's okay to be human. It's okay to reflect and be in the moment, right?
Well, we can be so hard on ourselves and think that, we should feel X, Y, and Z and nothing else. And we don't allow ourselves the full breadth, the full brushstroke of what it is to be human, that there's joy and there's suffering, that there's sorrow and there's celebration, that there's loss and there's love. And, life is that big sloppy and.
Yeah. You know what also I was thinking about when you started to talk about this is you never really know where someone's at, right? Or what they've been through or what they're going through. So sometimes when I've been meeting people either through LinkedIn or a mutual connection, or like your husband saw my message on LinkedIn and said, who would be great for this to be my wife? That kind of thing. And sometimes it's like, well, I don't know who this is. Or off camera, I was telling you that story about speaking at UB where I wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like. And until you get to that moment, meeting someone, meeting a group of people, or going and having more of a giver's mindset than I'm just going to get something from this, you never know how the other person is going to actually end up inspiring you if you look at it the right way. So if you think, oh, I don't want to meet this person, they have nothing in common with me, so it's not a good business connection. Well, guess what? Take the call with them anyway, because they may end up telling you something that just blows your mind, of just an amazing statement, thought, or connection. So totally appreciate you sharing that. It's okay to be human, and you never know what somebody's going through. Just because they're smiling today, they may have had some pretty big loss and some pretty big heartache, and maybe they need you to just smile back at them today, because that's going to make their day. So would you like to elaborate a little bit more on the delightful little book on aging and kind of what people can experience in that?
Yeah. A delightful little book on aging is a memoir-esque kind of book. I actually modeled it after a business book, even though it has nothing to do with business.
Sure.
I modeled it after a book by a guy named Derek Sievers, who started a company called CD Baby. And
I know that.
Well, there was a time that the only way you could get indie music was through CD Baby.
I was on there. I was an indie rock band on there about 15 years ago.
See what I mean? So Derek Sievers wrote this wonderful book called Anything You Want. It's a very thin little volume of oh God, they aren't even complete essays. They're little paragraphs and vignettes and things about how he started the company and what his feelings were and what the tone of things were. And, he ended up being very successful business wise, but he had, like you, like myself, I hope, this business philosophy that was a generosity of spirit. That, that to do good business, it wasn't just about, where you got your MBA. It was about, did you have a generosity of spirit? Because that was what was really going to carry the day. So a delightful little book on aging is a thin volume of personal essays about my experience of the aging process. Everything from the physical changes that happen as you grow older to the need to stay flexible. And by flexible, I mean physically and mentally, so that we adapt, so that you just don't say, oh, I hurt my elbow and now I can't play tennis anymore. Well, I have a friend in his 70s who plays tennis every day, but he has a two-handed forehand and a two-handed backhand that takes the pressure off his elbow.
Yeah.
So the importance of adaptability really saves the day. And once again, just to draw it back to these times that we live in, we're being called, to adapt to what's new, that this is a new world that we're living in. And so those were some of the reasons I put it together. It covers grief and it covers reclamation, vision, and laughter.
It's amazing that you went there with this, because my next question is about COVID-19 and the pandemic we're in, and many business owners and entrepreneurs who are, at the end of the day, they're people. We're all people. Okay. Your title doesn't make you who you are. Right. It's who you are as a person. So how would you, and many people are going through a rebuild. Some lost a job, some their spouse lost a job, some it's their parents that lost a job, and others, maybe you didn't physically, like I, being an entrepreneur, didn't necessarily lose a job, but what ended up happening is a lot of my small business clients started to really close down on their marketing budgets. So I absolutely was impacted. What advice would you give to anyone listening right now, could be a business owner or entrepreneur, about rebuilding and kind of getting in tune with yourself and moving forward?
I think that creativity doesn't grow from the polite, easy places. I think that creativity comes from the mud in our lives. And this is a time of great mud. We've had a whole dump truck of it on us. And what's interesting about these times is that as tough as things are, there's all kinds of imagining and reimagining going on around us. And that's really what's hopeful about these times. I have to say that I don't think that things are ever going to go back to the way they were. I think that we live in new times.
In many ways, that's a good thing, though, right?
In many ways, that's a good thing. And there have been times throughout history where something happens that you don't go back. It's like, I'm going to be 70 in another year. And it's like, I can't go back. I can't go back and recreate 50 or 40 in my life, but I can move forward.
But you look like you are. You look like you're back in your 50s.
That's very kind. But I can move forward. And so I would say that, to hang on to what this virus is giving us, which is she's giving us imagination and reimagination of the world. And that even once we get a vaccine and all of that down, it's like there's been too much change. Things are going to shift. I think the way that you see people entertaining themselves. Will we have large concerts in the future? We know now that the world is polluted. We've got, we're subject to pandemic. So how do we work with that? There is a way to work with it. Will we be in big groups? Will we get closer to people because we're more interested in getting together in small groups and being intimate? I read in a business journal recently that 35% of the people that drive to an office to do their job don't really need to go to an office to do their job. Will it change our whole way of how we approach living through the car? Will it change commercial real estate? What will happen to commercial real estate? Well, what if it became condos with, grocery stores and drugstores and things underneath it? And we, grew up in these little pods more.
Instead of like an insurance building that has 300 people and they're making phone calls or a call center, I mean, people through the pandemic, I know many people that were in insurance or like the collections where it's call center, they're doing it from home. Like you said, there's 25, 35% of people that are doing this, where that whole real estate building now could be something that's more, helping the economy. Those jobs aren't lost. They're just moving to home.
Right. Exactly. And so I think that there's all kinds of hope in reimagining this new world.
Let's move right into, you have another book coming out. I teased it in the beginning, coming out in the fall of 2021. So as we record this, that's about a year away. Creatrix Rising, and it's spelled Creatrix. It has the X on the end. Can you talk more about that? What it means?
Creatrix Rising is about unlocking the power of midlife women. Okay. And Creatrix is an actual name. It isn't made up. I think one of the three Greek fates there was a spinner, a weaver, and a cutter in the three Greek fates. And one of the fates was the weaver, and she was called Creatrix. So the word literally means a woman who makes things. Mm-hmm. And in writing about aging, one of the things that I discovered is that women are really stereotyped with age much earlier on than men are. That at 45, 50, they're concerned that they can't move on, or that they're too old to move on, or too ambitious for their age, whatever the scenario is. And what I noticed in the last probably 5 to 10 years are that there have been some big feminist events that have happened that have really changed the way older women are seeing themselves. One of the things that happened, of course, was the Women's March. It was big. It was bold. Women were really wanting to get involved. And then you've got the 2018 midterms. Historically, more women over the age of 50 ran for local, state, and national office than ever before in the history of our country.
Wow.
So women got real serious about leadership. But in getting serious about leadership, you have to get serious about the way you sign your emails. Be great and be grateful. So to be great, you need to throw a stake into the ground, name it, and claim it. And so that's what Creatrix Rising is about. It is about the archetypal image of this creatrix that's rising up in our culture. And by archetypal, for those of you who don't nerd out on Carl Jung psychology or philosophy, archetype simply means, the type means like typical, and arc, the trajectory of things. The archetype for women up till now, older women, has been crone. And crone is a word that entered the lexicon in the late 1830s, and it was meant as an insult. It was not meant as anything but an insult. You can dress it up and say, well, we're going to reclaim the word crone and put lipstick on it, but you're putting lipstick on a pig. Sure. So Creatrix replaces that word. And I realized that the whole archetypal progression of maiden, mother, crone is changing for women. And most especially in this arena of midlife women. We're throwing a stake into the ground. We're going to name it and we're going to claim it.
I think that's awesome. I saw something yesterday that made me think two things, actually. And I don't remember. I would give credit where it's due, but I don't remember who posted it. But it basically was like, someone was saying, like, women are either told they're too sexy, not sexy enough. They're too, business-like, or too out there. It's just like, let them be who they, you know what I mean? Like when you look at a picture, people are automatically trying to put it into something else instead of just letting it be what it is. And I feel like, it happens with men too, but not maybe as much, where if a 50-year-old woman is getting all dialed up, ready to go out, right? She's looking great. Some people are going to go, why is she doing that? She's 50. Why is she trying to look like she's 27? What's wrong with that? She's just going out and she's feeling great. Or if she's, got your hair up in a bun and you're just wearing your sweats, there's someone's going to say something about that, right? It's always, you got to be something that you're not currently in the moment for someone.
Fitting a definition that doesn't belong to you.
Fitting some definition. The other post I saw was someone said, I'm going to start saying the word male in front of different professions, like male doctor and male coach, and male entrepreneur, right? Because when it's female, we always say female entrepreneur. Why can't we just say she's an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur XYZ. Great, made me think. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the younger
more
generation
women should start doing that as to raise awareness.
Why not? But I think the younger generation is kind of getting a hold on this, because I notice I have a nephew who's 28 years old, and he would just never dream of saying, like female doctor, female pilot. He just wouldn't dream of that. It's like it's more balanced for his generation, I think.
Yeah. And how old is he?
He's 28.
Yeah, I agree. So we're not too far off, but I do feel that when I hear it now, I cringe, because I'm like, it doesn't need to be said. It just doesn't sound right to me. Something I don't cringe is when I see people rocking out some awesome Yankees gear. And I caught a picture of you, and was it on your website? You were wearing a Yankees hat.
Are you a Yankees fan?
Huge Yankees fan.
People either love the New York Yankees or they hate them. Okay.
Yeah.
So my last Labrador Retriever, who just passed, this beautiful dog, his name was Jeter.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. The next dog, we just put in a deposit for a puppy. We've already named the dog.
Exciting. Okay.
Yeah. Mickey
Mantle
Raffelock.
That's amazing. Mickey Mantle. I think I may have been. I'm Michael, but I think my dad always wrote notes to me, like when I'd come home from school as a kid, like do the laundry or whatever, and it always said Mickey instead of Mikey. He called me Mikey, but he wrote Mickey, and he's the biggest Mickey Mantle fan I've ever met. Maybe.
He was. My husband and I were talking about this, I think last night, because there was a double header on last night.
Yeah.
And he was saying, how Mickey Mantle was just like a hero to so many kids. And he's, as he got older, we all know that he drank and he was a womanizer and all that, but it had nothing to do with the way he played baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just an amazing figure.
And I want to say this too. He was like a superhero out there and whacking the ball 450, feet with just incredible. And half the time he had bad knees. He had the situation where he fell there was that drain in the outfield. And my dad always says, like, if that accident never happened, he probably plays another 5 years and breaks so many more records. And who knows how he would have played. He played, I think, 18 seasons, something pretty incredible, even with the injuries. He had that bleeding, like he had a hole in his side or something. And he didn't complain. He went out there and played. But I'm not going to give anybody an excuse for some of the things he did. But, if you look at his story, I believe his grandpa passed young and his dad passed young.
Yeah, he didn't think he was going to live very long.
He thought he was happy to see 50. And I think he passed away in his mid-60s.
Right.
But so he played and partied as if it was his last hurrah every day.
Yeah, he did. And I have to say that at the end of his life, he really talked a lot about, donating your organs when you die and liver replacement, all of that kind of stuff. He brought awareness to that, how that, you could sign the back of your driver's license and you could really save lives in that way. I love that about him. Did you see was it the movie that Billy Crystal did?
I don't know if I saw that. Well, was that 61? Did he direct 61?
Yeah.
Was that Billy Crystal? Yeah, that was that was a nice representation of him and Maris, Jason 60. But what I want to say is I didn't know that we'd talk this much about it. I just wanted to compliment another Yankees fan.
Okay, good.
My dad raised me right, and we watch the games and we hang out together with my mom does as well. But it's like our common thing that brings the two of us together. And so he taught me a lot about the history, but we're talking about Mickey Mantle. We could be talking about anybody right now. Something that is interesting, and I want to use this as a platform to talk about it, is people aren't defined by one thing they did or a few things they did, whether it was in their youth or whatever. He learned from those things, and later he was friends with Bobby Christensen, right, on the team, or Bobby Richardson, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking one person saying another name. Bobby Richardson was a second baseman, right? And so they became friends. And Bobby was he was a great Christian. Probably why I was saying the word,
right?
But he actually knew that Mickey didn't want anything to do with it in their playing days. He didn't really bring it up to him and stuff. But later on in life, Mickey was more approachable about that, and he actually, Bobby, I want to say, spoke at his funeral and stuff, and like they were together at the end, and Mickey really, you know, not that you want to wait until the very end to start to think about those things, but my point is people do change,
Right.
and moments don't necessarily define someone. And so if someone did something to you in your life and, maybe it was horrible or they didn't even maybe mean it or whatever, just remember about forgiveness and that people do learn and grow and adapt.
Yes. And and that's the arc of story.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
really the
His
arc of
life is
story,
a
that you're
great
just
story.
going along, minding your own business, and then something happens. You're Mickey Mantle. It sets you on this trajectory to become a famous ball player.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you're confronted with all these temptations because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet once you get towards the third act,
Mm-hmm.
that transformation place that happens in the third act of the story, you've done good in the world. And like you said, it doesn't matter. It's like all of those experiences count.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is to be human.
I believe this. I believe in God personally, and I believe that He puts people in position to tell stories as well. And as long as you're listening and know your positioning in all of that, like I finally felt called this past year. I got baptized at 34 years old. So I got baptized as a child in the Catholic Church, and then I chose now to do that as a Christian. And I'm just telling you that I started to think things not for myself first, but as serving first. So I do feel that He puts people in position to tell different stories. I love storytelling. That's why I'm so excited to have you on the show. And like you said, there's act 1, 2, 3, and all these different exciting things that happen, and we learn from them. So, a friend of mine that was on the show too, his name is Sir Amazing, right? Because his first name is May. And so he played off of a May and created the concept of being Sir Amazing. His book is about everyone has a hero. Why not it be you? Something like that. Why are you could be your own hero? We're the protagonists in our own story.
Yeah, we are. And the antagonist in our own story.
If we choose
but
to
that
be.
is the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's a call to purpose.
Mm.
That's what the whole journey is about. And hopefully you end up with your call.
It's so good. Within the next 12 minutes or so, this is kind of meant to be a little bit more of a lightning round. It never truly is, because I don't like to cut people off and give them one-word answers, but it kind of moves a little bit quicker. So one new skill or positive takeaway that you have from the quarantine?
I've become more diverse in my cooking.
Okay, that's cool, because you're home more, not going out as much.
Right.
What's your favorite dish that you make now?
I make a marinara sauce that I like to put on spaghetti squash.
That sounds really good. I got to come out to, you're in Austin now, right? I have cousins out that way, so I'm going to come visit, get some of that spaghetti squash.
And we'll watch a Yankee game.
Oh my God, it wrote itself.
See?
A playoff game in the near future would be good. They're off to a great start as we record this. I think they have 2 losses on the season so far, right?
Yep.
What is the ultimate accomplishment for you?
Feeling satisfied with the life I've lived.
Yeah, just reflecting on it and say,
yeah,
I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
Mic drop. Cool. You can name a couple here. Favorite books or podcasts and inspirational content that you tune into.
Okay. Podcast, This American Life, Ira Glass. Book, May Sarton, Journal of a Solitude. Not even sure if it's in print anymore, but I read her when I was in my early 30s, and I was amazed that a woman could write in such a raw, kind of real
That
way.
was a Journal of Solitude. Did I hear that right?
Journal of a Solitude by May Sarton. Let's see, podcasts. What was the third one?
Inspirational content.
Inspirational content. I like to read Howard Thurman. Cool. I like to read James Hillman. They're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like you, I am a believer. Mm-hmm. And so anything that uplifts my heart and inspires me to be a better person, that challenges me, actually is a better word than inspires, that challenges me to be a better person. Can I be a little bit kinder? Can I be a little more tolerant? Can I be a little more accepting? And not just of everyone out there, but also within my own self. Because sometimes, as you know, as a writer and a speaker, it's like you can really be hard on yourself, more so than anyone else.
Awesome. I'm going to get those notes for you too, if anyone asks me for exact books, and I can find them on Amazon and send them along as well. A little bit different than my other question, but that was the ultimate accomplishment. Now this is, if you can be known for one thing, and only one thing, what would it be?
Did life on my own terms.
Yeah. You didn't try to fit into a box. Stephanie, I love that. I could tell that the second the camera came on and we started joking right away. And then again, we're going to tie this back to the mission of the show. You remember that, to inspire our audience to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. What would you tell them?
I would say you're never too old to dream and you're never too young to dream. And don't be afraid to throw a stake into the ground and claim your greatness. Let your greatness lead you then towards your purpose, towards your calling, because we're here for more than just hanging out, having a chat. We're here to do and bring some good into the world. And
yeah, right. That's getting back to being on purpose again.
On purpose. You got it.
I like to do quotes. I pull quotes from these interviews and then I make social media content of them. And if I have a good picture of somebody, I usually put their picture in the quote, and I can already see never too old to dream, never too young to dream. And then I'll use your picture on that. So stay tuned for that. You got yourself some social media content on the house.
Okay, good. And then you can also do Go Yankees.
Go Yankees, yeah. Which 50% of the people will love and 50% of the people will hate. And we're okay with that, you know. Last three things here. I know it's going to be pretty easy for you to do this because you do it on a daily basis, at least twice a day. But what are three things that you think of right now that you're most grateful for?
I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my health. And I'm grateful that I always have enough to eat.
There you go. That's great. I'll say real quick. So a couple episodes ago, I had the opportunity of interviewing Dennis DiPaolo, and his father is the late, great Ilio DiPaolo, who is a Hall of Fame wrestler and has a famous restaurant here in Western New York named after himself. And he just talked about, the different things that he was grateful for. But when he talked about his dad, who started this restaurant, he came directly from Italy, where at that time it's not like it was today. They didn't have, food every day. I mean, he was living literally one meal to the next meal. And so when he made a determination of what he wanted to do with his life, he created a restaurant to make sure that the idea was that people wouldn't go hungry. He literally thought, like, with my restaurant, nobody's going to go hungry. Come in here and we'll take care of you. Come on in. And so talk about being on purpose. So I see that with you. Your restaurant is your books, is your blogs, is your podcast, right? And that's how we connect. So again, let's talk about your podcast before you head out. People can tune in on iHeart Radio, but it looks like it's also on Libsyn, so it's distributed all over, right?
It's distributed all over, wherever you get your podcasts. You can
Apple
just
Podcasts.
look up Yak About Today. Yep.
Okay. And then Spotify as well?
I think so.
Okay. And the name of it one more time? Yak About Today.
Yak About Today, but Yak is Y-A-K. Yak About Today.
And what kind of topics and things do you talk about?
Well, we talk a little bit about the boomer years, which is if you were born between 1946 and 1964. Mm-hmm. But we talk about current events. We talk about slice of life stuff that we've been thinking about, that we've been chewing on. We always pull a year from the past. Like today, we talked about 1975. What was going on in 1975 was such an innocent time. It was a time of mood rings. You probably don't remember mood rings. And
I know of them, sure. I'm a hippie at heart, too. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, but I love 50s and 60s music. So.
Okay, there you go. We talked about, actually in 75, Captain and Tennille's had the number one song, Love Will Keep Us Together. So we always cover a little bit, like from past years about, music, what was happening in literature, what was happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun to go back and contrast and compare, as it were.
I know the next show I'm going to dive into, Yak About Today.
All right.
Stephanie Raffelock, thank you so much for your time being here today. Grateful.
Thank you. Truly enjoyed myself.
I love you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. Check out more show notes and information on each episode at mikeduppodcast.com, MIKED uppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.